The air in the Galactic Council chamber was always thin and carried the scent of ozone and something floral. Ambassador Hannah found it unpleasant. It was a constant reminder she was far from the seaside cliffs of Busan. She adjusted the small, clear earpiece that translated the galaxy's myriad languages, her movements slow and precise. It was important not to show tension. Before her, in a wide circle, sat the representatives of the 7 founding species. Their forms were as varied as their worlds. Hannah kept her eyes fixed on the Selenian speaker. The Selenians were tall, with slender limbs and skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. They were considered the most aesthetically and technologically advanced of the council. Speaker Elvira's voice was a melodic chime, but Hannah heard the cold precision beneath it. "The data is irrefutable," Elvira chimed, a holographic star map blooming in the chamber's center. A region glowed a concerning orange. Human FTL experiments near the fringe world you call New Tegu are causing dangerous subspace instabilities. These ripples threaten not only your own colony but passing trade lanes. The chaos of your jump drives is a danger to all. Hannah's fingers tightened slightly on the smooth surface of her datapad. The report from her own scientists on Kuan Yin Station had been clear. The instabilities were unusual, localized, and didn't match the profile of standard FTL tests. They had requested more time to investigate, a request she had formally submitted. It had been ignored. The Toke, a species of rock-like beings, rumbled their agreement. The avian scree clacked their beaks in assent. One by one, the other council members gave their support to the Selenian statement. No one asked for the human counterdata. No one called for a deeper investigation. Therefore, Elvira continued, her large, dark eyes finally turning to Hannah. The Selenian Ascendancy, with the support of the Council, proposes Command 741. An immediate and indefinite cessation of all human faster-than-light research, development, and testing outside your home solar system. All current projects are to be dismantled. Compliance will be monitored. The finality in the chamber was a physical weight. This was not a discussion. It was a verdict. Hannah pressed a button on her console. The unified Terran government has filed a petition for a delayed vote under Council Statute 88 to allow for a joint investigation. Our scientists have preliminary findings that suggest alternative causes for the instability. Elvira's shimmer seemed to frost over. The petition was reviewed and deemed to lack sufficient standing. The data before us is clear. The vote will proceed now. Does the Terran delegation have any final words before we proceed to a binding vote? Hannah felt the eyes of the galaxy upon her. She saw the pity in some, the indifference in others, and the cool satisfaction in the Selenian delegation. To argue now would be seen as emotional, chaotic, everything the galaxy expected from young, reckless humanity. They wanted a scene. They wanted her to shout. She would not give it to them. She took a slow breath, the thin air burning her lungs. She stood, her plain gray UTG uniform stark against the vibrant robes and natural armors of the others. Her voice was calm, level, and carried no further plea. The Terran delegation notes that our petition for due process has been denied. We note that evidence contrary to the Selenian claim has been excluded from this proceeding. We register our formal protest of this action. She paused, letting the translator carry her words. She did not look at Elvira. She looked at the recording orbs, knowing this would be seen on Earth and on New Tegu. That is all. She sat down. The vote was called. It was unanimous. Command 741 was now galactic law. The trade sanctions attached to it, the economic stranglehold it would place on human colonies, hung unspoken in the air. The meeting adjourned. The other ambassadors began to mingle. Their conversations a soft hum. A junior aide, Min-Su, appeared at Hannah's side, his face pale. Ambassador, they didn't even listen. What do we do? Hannah gathered her datapad. On its screen was a live feed from Earth. The UTG Council was waiting. She looked at the departing back of Speaker Elvira, a figure of serene, unquestioned authority. We follow protocol, Hannah said, her voice low. We go home, and we review the command. She walked out of the chamber, her steps echoing in the now empty human aisle. She did not look back. In her mind, she was not thinking of protests or petitions. She was thinking of the report from the Kuan Yin station, buried in her secure files. The one that ended with Engineer Sumin's note. Anomaly is artificial. Repeat, artificial. Awaiting instructions. The official UTG statement, released an hour later, was a masterwork of bland diplomacy. Spokesperson Ji Ho, standing before a simple podium in Seoul, delivered it without a flicker of emotion. The unified Terran government has received the Galactic Council's Command 741. We are reviewing the command and its implications in full. We will respond through the proper diplomatic channels in due course. Across the galaxy, news analysts dissected the words. Receiving a command, not accepting. Reviewing, not complying. But the tone was so quiet, so subdued. The general conclusion was clear. Humanity, as predicted, had been put in its place. They would grumble, but they would obey. The matter was considered closed. In her quiet office on the transport ship home, Hannah opened the encrypted file from the Kuan Yin. She read Sumin's analysis for the 10th time. Then, she drafted a new message, not to the Council but to a specific, unlisted address on Mars. It contained only 2 words from the protest she had not voiced in the chamber. Begin preparation. The official order from Earth had been clear and public. All FTL research activities at the Kuan Yin station are to cease immediately. Power down non-essential systems. Await further instructions. The galaxy was watching. Engineer Sumin had followed the order to the letter. The main laboratory was dark. The humming core of the jump drive simulator was silent and cold. The observation windows, which usually looked out onto the swirling colors of the local subspace layer, were opaque. To any passing council scan, the Kuan Yin was a dead piece of metal orbiting a silent gas giant. But beneath the main lab, accessed through a maintenance hatch that looked no different from 1,000 others, was a different story. The air here was warmer, smelling of hot electronics and recycled air. The space was tight, packed with servers and diagnostic tools that had been quietly relocated over months. This was the back room, a project Sumin and a handful of trusted engineers had built during their off hours, just in case. Now it was the only room that mattered. Her senior, Tae-jun, wiped sweat from his brow. The last of the public data logs have been scrubbed. To anyone checking, we stopped all work 12 hours ago. The solar arrays are at minimal output. We look like a rock. Sumin nodded, her eyes not leaving her main screen. It displayed the confusing sensor readings that had sparked the whole crisis. The subspace instabilities the Council had blamed on human recklessness. The official Selenian data showed a violent, chaotic energy spike, perfectly matching the profile of an overloaded human FTL core. But Sumin had been running her own scans. And her scans were finer, listening for details the standard models ignored. Run the resonance filter again, she said. Isolate frequency band 709er.
Tae-yun typed.
The chaotic wave on the screen shifted, blurred, and then, as the filter cleaned the signal, a new pattern emerged. It was not chaos. It was a repeating, precise pulse, buried deep within the noise.
A signature.
It's there, Tae-jun whispered. It's a damn beacon. Not a beacon, Sumin corrected, her voice quiet. A resonator. It's not the sound of something breaking. It's the sound of something digging. She pulled up another file. It was the public mineral survey of the new Tegu system, the one filed with the Council when humanity claimed the colony. It listed common elements, nothing of major value. Then she opened a second file, one from a long-range probe they had sent out on a mapping mission before the sanctions. It had scanned a nearby asteroid field. The data was raw and unprocessed. Sumin laid the resonance signature from the instability over the mineral scan data. The computer chimed a soft, positive match. The resonance frequency matched the latent energy signature of an incredibly rare subspace reactive mineral, Kesslerite. The public survey made no mention of Kesslerite. The Selenian mining corporations, however, paid a fortune for it. It's a mining pulse, Sumin said, the pieces locking together. They're using a high-energy resonator to shatter the substrate around Kesslerite deposits. It's like using sonar to find fish, but this sonar is so powerful it looks like an earthquake on scanners. They're not just lying. They're actively creating the instability they blamed on us, and they're using the cover of the scandal to mine our system clean. The room was silent except for the hum of the servers. The weight of the discovery was immense. It wasn't just unfairness. It was a quiet, calculated theft wrapped in a legal decree. We have to send this to Ambassador Hannah, Taejun said. Soon, Sumin agreed. But the council monitors all official channels from here. We need a blind path. She had prepared for this too. During a supply run months ago, they had secretly launched 3 small, stealthy relay buoys. They were not on any station manifest. They were little more than simple transmitters with a tiny jump drive programmed to wait. They were scattered in the dark, far from the station's usual traffic. Sumin uploaded everything. The filtered resonance analysis, the mineral scan match, her conclusions. She wrote a short, clear message. The instability is manufactured. The command is a blockade, not a safety measure. Selenium mineral extraction is the cause. Awaiting orders. She attached the files and entered a string of coordinates that would not lead to Earth, but to a dead spot in the asteroid belt of the Sol system. From there, the data would bounce through a series of civilian comm satellites, lost in the noise of 1 billion daily signals, before being routed to a specific unlisted server on Mars. It was a slow path, a fragile one, but it was invisible. With a deep breath, she pressed the send key. The data packet vanished from her terminal. Now what?
Taejun asked.
Now, Sumin said, powering down the screen in the back room. We wait, and we look like we've given up. We do our maintenance shifts. We complain about the boredom. We are perfect models of obedience. She led the way back up through the maintenance hatch, sealing it carefully behind her. She emerged into the cold, dark silence of the official lab. The only light came from the red standby indicators on the powered-down equipment. It was a tomb for their work. Sumin walked to the main observation window and commanded it to clear. The swirling, beautiful chaos of subspace was still there, rippling with the artificial quakes of a distant, hidden theft. She placed her hand against the cold glass. They thought humanity would just sit in the dark. They thought they had turned out the lights. But in the dark, Sumin thought, you learn to listen. And what she had heard was the truth. It was just a matter of time before everyone else heard it too. The docking bay of Viridia Prime was a symphony of organized chaos that Taejun usually loved. The smell of ionized thruster exhaust, the shouts of loaders in a dozen languages, the constant metallic clang of cargo containers. It was the sound of business, of connection. His ship, the Hopeful Venture, was not much to look at. Its hull was scuffed and patched, but its engines were clean and its hold was full of legitimate, useful goods. High-yield seed stock and soil-enriching biotech from Earth. Bound for the struggling agricultural colony on Cerulean, he had just finished the final customs forms, a tedious process made longer by the new priority inspections for human-affiliated vessels. The Galactic Council seal on the forms felt heavy and cold. Captain Taejun? A voice chimed behind him. He turned to see a Selenian port official, his pearlescent skin gleaming under the bay lights. He held a datapad. His expression was one of polite, distant regret, like a doctor about to deliver bad news. A moment, please. Of course, Taejun said, forcing a smile. Is there an issue with the forms? No issue with the forms, the Selenian said. His tone was smooth. However, under the new compliance measures for Command 741, all human-origin biotechnology is now classified as a dual-use technology of potential instability. Pending a full review, we must impound your cargo. Taejun's smile froze. A review? That seed stock is perishable. The colony needs it before their dry season. The review could take months. The process is what it is, the official said, not unkindly. It was the kindness that stung the most. Your ship is also subject to impound for a detailed scan. Precaution. We will, of course, provide you and your crew with temporary lodging permits while you wait. Temporary lodging permits. They meant the grimy, overcrowded transient sector where beings with no credit waited for problems to be solved that never were. Tae-young watched as a team of Selenian dockworkers, accompanied by a hovering security drone, began attaching tow lines to the hopeful venture. His ship, his home, the place where his daughter had taken her first steps. "This is a mistake," Tae-young said, his voice tighter now. "This cargo has no connection to FTL research. It's dirt and seeds." "The connection is one of origin," the official corrected gently. "Human technology is, at this time, considered inherently unstable until proven otherwise. The burden of proof is on you. I suggest you contact your government for assistance." Tae-young's first officer, Gina, rushed up, her face pale. "Captain, they're locking out the main computer. They say we can't even access our personal logs." The official gave a slight, apologetic bow. "Standard procedure for an impound scan. You may collect personal items now under supervision. You have 1 hour." The next hour was a quiet humiliation. Tae-young and his crew of 6 were watched as they packed small bags. The Selenian guards were not cruel, but they were utterly indifferent. They were just following the new rules, the rules for humans. Standing in the bustling concourse outside the bay, his crew looked to him. They were scared and angry. Gina had family on Cerulean relying on this shipment. Young pilot Day had his savings tied up in the voyage. "We'll fight this," Day said, his hands balled into fists. "We'll get a lawyer." Tae-young looked at the sealed bay doors where his ship was now a prisoner. He looked at the flow of other traders, Scree, Tok, a dozen others, going about their business freely. He saw a Selenian freighter, sleek and unblemished, being loaded with crates marked with the same agricultural symbols his own cargo had borne. Coincidence, perhaps, but he doubted it. A cold, hard understanding settled in his gut. This was not a mistake or a bureaucratic delay. This was the plan. Strangle the trade, strand the people, seize the assets. Make being human so expensive, so difficult that we retreat and give up. "We won't get a lawyer," Tae-young said, his voice low and calm. The anger was still there, but it had been compressed into something solid and useful. "The law is what they say it is today. We need a different approach." He sent his crew to secure the temporary lodging, telling them to stay together and keep their heads down. Then he found a public comm terminal, one that took metallic coins instead of credit chits. He fed in a few coins, ones he'd kept in his boot out of habit. He didn't call a lawyer or the Earth Trade delegation. He input a long, memorized sequence of family code. The screen flickered, connecting to a private line on Earth. After a few rings, his cousin's face appeared, bleary-eyed. "It was the middle of the night there. Tae-young, is the run done?" His cousin mumbled. "No," Tae-young said, his voice steady. He kept his message simple, knowing it might be monitored, but using the old family fishing codes they'd used as boys. "The harbor master here has closed our usual fishing ground. Says our nets are the wrong type. He's keeping our boat and our catch. We're stuck on the dock." His cousin's sleepiness vanished. He understood. Understood. "Bad weather? The worst," Tae-young said, watching a Selenian security patrol glide past. "Tell everyone back home not to sail here. The harbor master makes his own rules. We need new maps, new places to fish." His cousin, a mid-level planner in the UTG Logistics Corps, gave a slow, grim nod. "I'll spread the word. New maps. Stay safe, cousin." The call ended. Tae-young stepped away from the terminal. He looked up at the vast artificial sky of Viridia Prime, painted with advertisements for starships and luxury goods he could no longer afford. The lock had been placed on them. It was a hard, undeniable fact. But as he walked towards the grim transient sector, his mind was already working. If the main shipping lanes were closed, you found the hidden currents. If your nets were taken, you learned to fish with your hands. It was not a vow of loud revenge he made to himself, but a quiet promise of perseverance. They wanted to leave humanity adrift. So be it. They would learn to navigate in the dark. The room was silent, cold, and hidden. It was not on Earth or Mars or any colony. It was a hollowed-out rock in the Oort cloud, so far from the sun that it was just another piece of eternal darkness. A single light shone over a simple metal table. Admiral J sat before a wall of screens, each one telling a story of quiet suffocation. One screen showed the financial summary. The lines for interstellar trade were all trending down, hitting zero. Sanctions were biting. Another showed the political reports. The council had rejected 3 more appeals, each one more politely dismissed than the last. A third screen showed a feed from Viridia Prime, a list of impounded human vessels. He saw the hopeful venture on the list. He thought of Captain Tae-young, the cousin of one of his logistics officers, now stranded. The final screen held the important data. It was Engineer Suman's analysis from the Kuan Yin, delivered through the blind path. It glowed with damning clarity. The resonance signature, the Kesslerite match, the proof of Selenian mining inside human space under the cover of their own false scandal. Jay was a man who had built his career on understanding patterns. The pattern here was not one of simple bullying or bureaucratic disdain. It was a pattern of theft and containment. The Selenians were not just trying to slow humanity down. They were trying to fence them in, steal the resources from their backyard, and use the galaxy's own laws to make any response look like criminal aggression. His aide, Commander Park, stood beside him. The Council's response to our latest evidence? They classified it as unverifiable data from a non-compliant facility, Jay said, his voice even. They said it does not alter the standing command. Park let out a slow breath. Then there is no legal path. There hasn't been a legal path from the beginning, Jay said. They created a door, locked it, and threw away the key. Then they told us we were being unreasonable for wanting to leave the room. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the cold table. For years, he had overseen strategic readiness. It was a boring title for a boring job. Planning for wars everyone said would never happen. His budget had been cut again and again. The Council preached peace, and humanity, eager to be good citizens, had listened. They had a small, modern defense fleet. It was elegant, Council-approved, and would last about 7 minutes against the Selenian armada. But Jay was a man who read the fine print. The Council's restrictions were very specific. They limited warship tonnage, military FTL drive power, offensive weapon yields. They said nothing about civilian engineering. They said nothing about bulk freighters. They said nothing about the duty to provide disaster relief to your own colonies. He tapped a command into the table. The main screen changed. It showed a new design. It was not a warship. It was a massive, blocky, ugly thing. It had no elegant weapons arrays. Instead, it had giant docking clamps, external cargo racks, and massive shield generators that were, technically, for deflecting micrometeors during slow space travel. "What is that?" Park asked, frowning. "The Guangzhou-class mobile foundry," Jay said. "A civilian vessel. According to its specs, filed with the Council's Trade Authority last year, it is a heavy construction and deep space rescue platform. It's the size of a battleship. It has to be," Jay replied, "to do its civilian job. It can manufacture building materials, process or generate atmosphere, and house 5,000 specialist workers. It is a flying factory, a self-sufficient town." Park's eyes widened as she began to see it. "We're not building a navy. We are fulfilling our humanitarian and colonial development obligations," Jay corrected. "Command 741 halted our military FTL. It said nothing about improving our civilian logistics. New Tegu is facing a crisis. They may need help. We must be ready to provide it." He brought up more files. The project was already in motion. It had been, since Ambassador Hannah's first, quiet warning. Decommissioned freighters were being taken apart in hidden yards. Their engines were not being scrapped. They were being bundled together into new, overpowered drive cores for the foundries. Asteroid mining operations, always running at a loss, were suddenly producing a surplus of raw plate metal. Every resource labeled wasteful or redundant by the Council's efficiency experts was being funneled into the project. "We are using the very laws they made to chain us," Jay explained. "They limited our swords, so we are building shovels. But when you have enough shovels and you hold them the right way, they can break a fortress gate." He opened a final channel. A live feed appeared. It showed a cavernous interior, a dry dock hidden within the moon of a dead planet. Inside, lit by the sparks of 1,000 welders, were the skeletal frames of not one or two, but dozens of the hulking Guangyo vessels. They were being built not for beauty, but for sheer, overwhelming presence. Project Guangyo is active, Jay said into the comm. Accelerate to Phase 3. All shipyards, all depots. Use every gram of material. The time for quiet preparation is over. Now we build openly. They will see what they want to see. A desperate people building useless lifeboats. He turned back to Park. The calm in the room was not the calm of peace. It was the calm of a decision made, of a path chosen. They think they have left us with no options, Jay said, looking at the image of the growing fleet. They are wrong. They left us with the only option that matters. The option to do our job. And our job, Commander, is to make sure no human is ever left stranded again. On the screen, another skeletal frame was lifted into place by silent, massive cranes. The work continued, not in anger, but with the steady, relentless rhythm of a foundation being poured. The air on New Tegu was thin and carried the scent of pine from the highland forests. It was a good smell, a clean smell. Ambassador Hannah stood on a landing pad at the edge of the main settlement, watching the sky. It was a pale lavender, streaked with the soft colors of dusk. It looked peaceful. It was a lie. Beside her, Council Liaison Minsu adjusted his jacket against the chill. He was young, sharp, and still believed in the system. The observation team from the Galactic Council is due in 3 hours. They will verify the stabilization of the incident. This is a good thing. It shows they are taking our concerns seriously. Hannah did not look at him. She looked at the data on her wristpad. The incident had occurred 12 hours ago. A sudden, violent subspace tremor 50 kilometers from the settlement. It had cracked a tectonic plate, triggered minor earthquakes, and released a cloud of toxic gas from a subterranean vent. 3 miners were dead. A dozen more were in the infirmary. The official Selenian science report already published was clear. It was a tragic but predictable result of residual human FTL instability, a latent effect from the banned experiments. The Council had, with somber urgency, authorized a Selenian stabilization and aid fleet to secure the area and prevent further disaster. They are not taking our concerns seriously, Minsu, Hannah said, her voice quiet. They are creating a pretext. Our own scientists have pinpointed the epicenter. It matches the location of a Selenian deep-scan resonator, the same type used for Kesslerite mining. They triggered this. Minsu paled. We have proof. We have data. Proof requires someone who wants to see it. The Council has already voted to send their fleet. The first sign was a shimmer, high in the lavender sky, then another and another. Clean, elegant wedges of light pierced the atmosphere. They descended without sound, their technology so advanced it suppressed the thunder of their arrival. Selenian vessels, 7 of them. They were not huge warships, but they were unmistakably military, sleek, silver, and armed. They took positions in a low orbit over the settlement. A calm, melodic voice echoed from every comm system, public and private. People of New Tegu. This is Commander Valen of the Selenian Ascendancy, acting under Galactic Council Mandate 889. A subspace catastrophe has made your world unsafe. To protect you and to secure the region, we are establishing a planetary safety perimeter. All local authority is hereby suspended for the duration of the stabilization. Please remain calm. Compliance ensures your safety. On the landing pad, miners and farmers emerged from their homes, looking up at the silver ships that now darkened their twilight. There was confusion, then a dawning fear. Suspended local authority meant their elected governor meant nothing. It meant Selenian soldiers would soon be on their ground. Minsu was frantically tapping his comm unit. I have the council director on channel. We can protest this overreach. There are procedures. Hannah put a hand on his arm to stop him. She looked up at the nearest Selenian ship, a sharp, beautiful knife hanging in the sky. The time for procedure was over. It had been over from the moment Command 741 was passed without a human in the room. She opened a direct, public channel to the Selenian fleet. She did not use the diplomatic frequencies. She used the general broadcast band so every settler on New Tegu could hear. Her voice, when it came, was not loud. It was clear, hard, and final. Commander Valen, this is Ambassador Hannah of the Unified Terran Government. Your fleet is in violation of sovereign human space. The Galactic Council mandate is based on false data. Humanity did not cause this disaster. Selenian resource extraction did. We have the evidence. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. She could picture Valen on his bridge, surprised by the directness, perhaps amused. We do not require, nor do we authorize, your intervention. A human relief operation is already en route to stabilize our world and care for our people. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. The response was swift. Valen's voice returned, still melodic, now with a layer of cold steel. Ambassador, your refusal of aid is noted. However, the Council mandate is clear. The danger is planetary. We cannot allow your obstinacy to risk further lives. The stabilization fleet will proceed. We strongly advise your cooperation. On her wristpad, a private message flashed from Admiral J. It was one word. Now. Hannah looked at Min-Su, whose face was a mask of shock. She looked at the gathered settlers, their fear turning to something else as they heard her defiance. She keyed the comm one last time, her eyes fixed on the Selenian ships. Then you leave us no choice. You are not protectors. You are occupiers. Your presence here is an act of aggression. The Unified Terran Government will now act to preserve the safety and sovereignty of its people by any and all means available to us. She closed the channel. The silence that followed was absolute. Up in the sky, the Selenian ships held their positions, unmoving. They did not believe she had any means at all. Min-Su found his voice. A whisper. Ambassador, what have we done? They have a fleet. We have. What do we have? Hannah finally looked away from the sky. She met the eyes of the settlers. She saw the fear, but she also saw a spark. It was the spark that came when someone finally stopped talking and started telling the truth. We have, Hannah said, exactly what we need, and they are about to see it. Far above, in the silent dark beyond the planet's atmosphere, the first human ships began to translate into real space. The show was over. The work was about to begin. Misuk stood with her students in the main square of the settlement. She had tried to keep them calm. She had told them about the earthquake, about the brave people coming to help from other stars. She had not told them about the arguments in the sky, the words of ambassadors and commanders. The children held each other's hands, their small faces turned upward. Above them, the Selenian ships were beautiful. They were like silver leaves or sharp, polished stones. They hung in the lavender sky, silent and still. They had turned off their loudspeakers. The quiet was worse. It was a waiting quiet. Then, a new sound came. It was not a loud sound. It was a deep, quiet hum that you felt in your chest before you heard it with your ears. The ground under Misuk's feet vibrated softly. Like the world was taking a deep breath. A little boy, Jean, pointed. Teacher, the stars are moving. At the edge of the sky, near the big, sleeping mountain, a star twinkled. Then it stretched. It was not a star. It was a tear in the black cloth of space. The tear was rough, not clean. Light spilled out of it, a hard, white light. A shape came through. It was not beautiful. It was blocky and dark. It had no shiny parts. It was the color of old iron and shadow. It was so big that as it came fully into the sky over New Tegu, it covered a whole handful of stars. Misuk heard a gasp from the adults around her. The children were silent, their eyes wide. The first ship was just the beginning. Another tier opened, higher up. Another dark shape pushed its way out. Then another to the south. Another tear, another ship. They did not come in a flashy line. They just appeared, one after another, in different parts of the sky, as if they had been waiting in the dark for a very long time. The hum grew deeper into a steady, pounding rhythm. It was the sound of many giant hearts beating together. The Selenian ships, the beautiful silver ones, began to move. They turned slowly like surprised animals. They grouped together. Their sleek shapes looked small next to the new arrivals. Still, the human ships came. They came until the whole eastern sky was a wall of dark metal. They came until the western sky was full of their squared-off silhouettes. They moved into position not around the settlement but around the entire planet. They did not point weapons. They just stopped and waited. The lavender light of the sun began to fade. It was not sunset. It was being blocked. The huge, dark ships slid in front of the sun, one after another. A deep shadow fell across the square, across the whole settlement. It grew colder. The sky, which had been full of color and light, was now full of ship. It was not a sky with ships in it. It was a ceiling of ships. The last bit of sunlight disappeared. The square was lit only by the soft ground lights and the faint, glowing symbols on the bottoms of the enormous vessels above them. The world had gone quiet except for that deep, steady hum. Then, a voice came. It was not a melodic chime. It was a human voice, calm and plain. It came from every speaker, from every personal calm, just like the Selenian voice had. But this voice was different. It was tired and sure, and it spoke basic English with a simple, clear accent. People of New Tegu, this is Admiral J of the Terran Reconciliation Fleet. Please stand by. The situation is now under human control. The message ended. The hum continued. Misuk looked down. Little Jean was still holding her hand. He was not scared. He was staring up, his mouth open. Teacher, he whispered. Are they our ships? Misuk looked around at the faces of her neighbors. She saw the fear melting away, replaced by wonder, and then by a slow, dawning understanding. They had felt alone. They had felt small under the beautiful silver ships. Now they stood in the shadow of something that was not beautiful at all. It was solid. It was there. She squeezed Jin's hand. Yes, Jean, she said, her own voice a whisper in the vast quiet. They are ours. They came. Above, the Selenian ships, once the only power in the sky, now looked like lost silver pebbles under a mountain of stone. They darted this way and that, their clean lines suddenly looking fragile. They had come to take control. But you cannot take control of a sky that is already full. You cannot give orders to a shadow. The shadow did nothing. It just waited. And in that waiting, Misuk felt something she had not felt since the first council command. She felt safe. The silence on the bridge of the Selenian command ship was total. Commander Valen stared at the main viewer. It showed not stars, but a wall of dark, pitted metal. The human vessel filled the entire screen. It had no elegant lines, no shining hull. It was a slab. It made his own beautiful ship feel like a piece of delicate glass. His communication officer turned, her voice strained. Commander, a direct channel request. From the lead human vessel. It identifies itself as the Guangyo. Valen took a moment to straighten his tunic. He must show control. He must remind them of order. Put it through. Visual. The screen shifted. Instead of the dark metal, he saw a human man in a plain gray uniform. He was not young. His face was lined, his hair short and gray. He looked like a tired factory manager, not a fleet admiral. Behind him was a simple bridge, full of functional screens, not the artistic flowing consoles of a Selenian ship. I am Commander Valen of the Selenian Ascendancy, acting under full Galactic Council authority. Valen began, his melodic voice firm. You have entered a restricted stabilization zone. Your fleet's configuration is a clear provocation. Power down your drives and submit to inspection, or be in violation of. The human Admiral J held up a hand. It was a simple, quiet gesture. It stopped Valen's words. Commander Valen, J said. His voice was calm, almost polite. There seems to be a misunderstanding. There is no violation. Valen felt a flicker of anger. Your fleet's weapons are a direct threat to a council mission. Jay's eyebrows raised slightly. He looked almost confused. Weapons? Commander, these are not warships. The Galactic Council's own registries will confirm this. These are Guangyo-class mobile foundries, civilian vessels, construction and deep space rescue platforms. He turned slightly, speaking to someone off-screen. Display the civilian specification plate, please. On a side screen, a document appeared. It was a standard Council Trade Authority form. It listed the Guangyo as a heavy engineering and humanitarian aid vessel. Its listed armaments were 0. Its drive power was listed as adequate for station keeping. Valen's mouth went dry. The forms looked authentic. They probably were. Our mission is purely humanitarian. Jay continued, his tone that of a man explaining a simple task. You reported a planetary disaster on New Tegu, a subspace instability. As the responsible governing body, the unified Terran government is obligated to provide relief. This fleet is that relief. We are here to stabilize the tectonic fault, filter the atmosphere, and provide medical and logistical support to the colonists. He leaned forward slightly. In fact, Commander, your own data has been very helpful. It pinpointed the exact source of the instability. A new image appeared. It was a detailed scan of the planetary fault line. A pulsing red dot was highlighted deep within it, the exact frequency signature of a selenium mining resonator. Our scans confirm the epicenter contains non-Terran technology, Jay said, his voice losing its polite tone, becoming matter of fact. Selenium technology, to be precise. A Kesslerite prospecting resonator, which is known to cause severe subspace feedback. It appears the disaster you came to stabilize was, in fact, caused by unauthorized selenium resource extraction within sovereign human space. Valen's mind raced. They knew. They had proof. And they were delivering the accusation not as an act of war, but as a bureaucratic complaint. You have no authority to remove anything, Valen snapped. On the contrary, Jay said, under the colonial charter, which the Selenian Ascendancy ratified, a governing body has not only the authority but the duty to remove hazardous foreign debris from its territory to ensure the safety of its people. It's a simple cleanup operation. On the main viewer, the image shifted back to the external view. From the belly of the massive Guangzhou, hundreds of smaller vessels poured out. They were not fighters. They were heavy industrial shuttles, tugboats, and mining drones. They streamed past the Selenian ships, ignoring them completely, and began descending toward New Tegu's surface, heading straight for the locations of the hidden mining platforms. They are unarmed work pods, Jay said, as if commenting on the weather. They will dismantle the hazardous equipment. Your fleet is, of course, welcome to observe the humanitarian and environmental operation to ensure everything is done properly. We believe in transparency. Valen could only watch. He could not fire. To fire on a civilian relief fleet, on unarmed industrial pods, after being presented with proof of his own people's crime, would not be an act of enforcement. It would be an act of piracy. The Council would abandon him in an instant. The human fleet did not aim a single weapon. It did not posture or threaten. It simply got to work. The shadow in the sky became a hive of quiet, purposeful activity. The message was not written in laser fire. It was written in the stark, undeniable language of facts, regulations, and 10,000 silent, working ships. Admiral J gave a small, polite nod. Now, if you will excuse me, Commander, I have a disaster relief operation to supervise. The people of New Tegu have waited long enough for help. The screen went dark, returning to the view of the dark, silent metal wall on the surface. Misuk and the children watched as the first large shuttles landed near the fault line. Not with weapons, but with large stabilizing machines and atmospheric scrubbers. The message from the sky was not one of conquest. It was simpler than that. It was over. The humans were here, and they were fixing the problem.